of collect at the tables, but ideally, we can kind of gather around the campfire, so to speak. Grab your last slice of pizza, if there's any left. Yes. Yeah, actually, if you know where they are. That's great. And can you make sure the live stream gets turned on too? The front desk person should turn it on, but I'm not sure if it's on. See,
it looks like it's, yeah.
Does that mean it's on? Or
I think so.
is it supposed to turn
Is it
green?
on, girl?
It's on?
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so we're live. How about that? So so all these meetings in here are live streamed onto YouTube. So Austin Tech Live is the name of the account. If you ever want to go check out things that happen at Capital Factory in the main rooms, and this is one of the main rooms, Startup Grind included, you can go look on that account, which is very cool. We'll go ahead and get started. So just want to tell you a little bit about Startup Grind. We meet here monthly on second Wednesdays. I'm Damon, by the way. I'm the director. Startup Grind, you can see this sign. It has a few cities on it, but really there's 500 cities around the world that have a Startup Grind community. And I think it's been around for 9 years, maybe 10 years, and it started in Silicon Valley. Ours has been around for 5 years, 6 years, and I've been doing it for around 2 years, being the director. So tonight we have a special guest. Albert is joining us from Miami, Florida's chapter of Startup Grind. And so I'll introduce Albert here in a second. And then of course Ryan is here. He's going to join us for our main fireside chat as well. So thank you to our sponsors. Egan Nelson is a law firm, world-class counsel for startups. If you're looking for an attorney, check them out. And thank you to Capital Factory for allowing us to meet here. This is an amazing space, and we always appreciate the fact that they opened this up to us. Logistics, we're going to do our chat for roughly an hour. I'll have my time with Ryan, and you guys will have your chance to talk to Ryan and give him your thoughts or questions. We'll hang out a bit more, and then if people want to, we can maybe go across the street for a drink after everything is over. If you need to go to the restrooms are not in this room. They're out in the hotel. You walk past the elevators, and they're down on the right. Let's see. That's pretty much it. Thank you for coming. It's always fun, and we have a good crowd, so this is awesome. All right, let me introduce Albert here. Albert Santalo is a computer scientist, internet entrepreneur, and angel investor with experience in high-growth, venture-backed technology companies, and his passion lies in designing products and building companies that disrupt traditional business models. So Albert is all the way from Miami, Florida, and he's gonna talk to you guys for a few minutes about 8base, his company. And one of the big reasons why we have Albert here is he was the Startup Grind Startup of the Year at our global conference in February, where there are hundreds of startups pitching and trying to win, and his company, 8base, won that competition. And so they have a developer-focused tool, which is very cool, and he's going to talk a little bit about it. And Austin is full of developers. We're a very, sort of tech-savvy market, and so wanted to tell you guys a bit about 8base and a little bit about his story. So we'll have Albert come up for a few minutes. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Damon. Guys, it's great to be here. Believe it or not, this is my first time in Austin. I don't know why that is, but here we are. So thank you for coming tonight. I'll be brief. So to give you a little background on me, and that'll dovetail into 8base. So I started my career as an engineer a long time ago. At the time, I was deeply technical. I was working on sort of industrial strength business systems in the financial services sector. And then I saw healthcare technology. I saw how screwed up healthcare was, and said, well, this is an area that needs some help. And along the way, transitioned from being a developer to being more on sort of the business side. And that happened when I joined a startup in the mid-90s called AnswerThink Consulting Group, which was venture funded, went public, and then today is known as the Hackett Group. And while I was there, I did a lot of technology consulting, mostly with large US companies in all different industries. And then in 2001, I started my first company. It was called Avicenna. It was a terrifying experience for me. At the time, I had 4 kids and a wife who was a teacher. And I was a breadwinner, left my job a month after 9/11, a year after the dot-com bubble burst. And here I was, a young tech entrepreneur trying to make it happen. But raised a couple $1 million of angel investment, then venture capital, figured out how to sell to physicians, and eventually exited. And then in 2009, started CareCloud, which is what most people know me for. CareCloud was started, and by the way, all these companies in Miami. CareCloud was started in 2009. If you remember, so 2001 was really bad economy. 2009 was similar for different reasons, right? And so CareCloud raised $2.8 million of angel investment in that year. They say that in the entirety of the US, there was only $100 million raised that year. So CareCloud in Miami raised nearly 3% of it, may have been the largest angel round in the US, and then raised $5 million the next year. And then sort of like the startup grind experience, got invited to IBM Smart Camp in Silicon Valley and ended up winning in the middle of Silicon Valley in front of all the venture community in the Quadris on Sand Hill Road. And the other companies were all Silicon Valley companies, and people are scratching their head going, who's the guys from Miami? And that led to a Series A led by Silicon Valley investors. Norwest and Intel Capital is a $20 million Series A. Later, more capital. In total, over $100 million went into CareCloud. And it was the first Silicon Valley deal in Miami, probably in over 10 years since the dot-com days. So it was a nice thing. And raising $100 million is a notable accomplishment, but it's something I never want to do again. So grew the company successfully in excess of 100% growth per year. CareCloud is a single instance, multi-tenant, software as a service for healthcare providers, financial, administrative, and clinical applications to run a medical practice in over 50 different medical specialties, small, medium, and large practices across the entire United States. It was a daunting undertaking, and that's why it took $100 million. Because not only was it hard to engineer, but figuring out how to sell to doctors at scale was a notoriously difficult thing. And we were doing it at our peak. We were selling 70 deals a month, some small, some large. And then be careful what you wish for, because then you had to implement them. And all the selling, we would market them, they would come, but the selling was hand-to-hand combat, and the implementation was even worse. And so in 2016, I left the day-to-day because for probably 15 years, being in and around all this software, and I was no longer a developer, right? But I was still the guy designing the product. And I said, there's got to be a better way. Like, I see what developers do, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. They do the same things over and over again. They go home happy at night with the intellectual accomplishments that they achieve, which may have nothing to do with business value. And you throw armies of developers and they don't become more productive. It's just a nightmare, and it burns through venture capital. And with the advent of modern cloud-based platforms, I felt like there was an opportunity to do it better. So as I researched the space, I realized there was something called low-code development platforms that was emerging, and that's what I set out to do. Purposely wanted to bootstrap it, so only raised $1 million of angel, and got to work on 8Base. And so 8Base has evolved in the sense that at the beginning, we weren't sure if we were going to go after developers or citizen developers being business people. And we decided along the way that the large unmet need was developers themselves. So we cater to developers, and it's largely front-end developers, allowing front-end developers, call them JavaScript developers, maybe better than front-end developers, to build fully functional, powerful software without a lot of help, with a small team, no DevOps people at all, and perhaps no back-end developers at all, in a fully scalable way. And so 8Base can be used in a lot of different ways. It can be used for systems you build inside your company. But more importantly, I think of it as it's the foundation for building software products. Because that's really what I set out to do. I was building software products, and I said, we have to find a better way to build software products. And I think our timing is incredible because what I'm seeing now is that there's more entrepreneurship than there's ever been. It's gotten easier, the price has gone down, and you can get a product up and running pretty quickly. But most of the time, the focus on the part of entrepreneurs is really making it look good and making it function. But it typically breaks at scale. I'm finding this over and over again. And the accelerators are, especially the notable accelerators, are saying that one of the biggest problems is they get entrepreneurs, a lot of non-technical founders, and their products just need to be rewritten. And who as an entrepreneur has time to do that? So the big part about 8base is that you build for scale from the first go-around. You're only incrementally adding value to your product. It's comprehensive, it scales. Hopefully you're gonna be very successful, you're gonna have 1 million customers, and 8base will scale to meet that need. And you do this inexpensively with JavaScript developers, which is the most abundant resource of developers in the world. So today we have customers. If you remember, I mentioned at CareCloud we had a lot of salespeople. I didn't want those again. So we built the product to be self-service from day one, and the vision has always been go to sleep at night and wake up with more customers. And so we really didn't launch the company until we had the whole paywall set up and the whole thing works. And so now, every morning we have a Slack channel that goes off, it's called the Gong, and you see customers, developers from different parts of the world come in and go into the free trial. When they put in a credit card, the Gong goes off again, and it starts to scale. And in the process of all this, we've also had IBM Global Services show up. We ended up signing a contract with IBM way earlier than we ever thought we could, and IBM is building software for NATO on 8base, which is something we're very proud of. And then the last piece is that we are helping companies from a professional services perspective. So a lot of times entrepreneurs come to us to say, we want to build on 8base, but we don't really have the expertise, we don't have developers, and we say, well, we can help you. And so we come in, we help them design the product, and then we do the development for them and get them to a minimum viable product, et cetera, hand it over or stay engaged, whatever makes sense. And that helps us also to fund the company without a lot of capital. We've raised a little under $3 million so far. Firebrand, and Ryan's one of our investors. We're very proud of these guys, are great. And we were the global winners of Startup Grind this year, which we didn't expect. There was like 2,000 applicants, and they were telling us you're vying for 300 spots. We're like, we have to be in the 300. And so they selected us for the 300, and then we went to the event, and truthfully, we didn't know it was a competition. Maybe that's a secret of winning, I don't know, but we didn't know it was a competition. All of a sudden, they walk up to us and said, you guys won. I'm like, we won? Like, yeah, you won. I'm like, well, that's cool. And so we got up on stage, we accepted the award, and that's actually how we met Firebrand, was John, Ryan's partner, sent a cold email. It's great when you get a cold email from a VC and not the other way around. And he said, this is not a joke, this is serious, I'm calling. It was something like that. And I'm like, sure, John, let's hop on the phone. And you know what, it was great. You know, we quickly got to a deal, and they invested, and they've been great partners in the process. And so the Startup Grind experience has been great for us. By the way, we got another investor out of that process as well, through Firebrand. The experience with Startup Grind has been tremendous. And so, you know, I'm really happy to be here. I'll cut it off at this point. But I'll be around. I'll be around all night if you guys have any questions for me or anything. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Albert. That was perfect. Under 10 minutes. Was it really? 9 minutes. It's amazing. That's amazing. You seem like you could go on. Yeah. You've got that thing. You know, you did great. Well, cool. Let's see. So we're gonna have Ryan come up. So let me pull up his bio here. I mean, you know, we've already heard that he's a partner at Firebrand, which is a VC firm based out of Kansas City, focusing on founders in the greater Midwest. But he is their Austin, office, their Austin bastion. Ryan is a native Texan, but he spent 10 years in San Francisco, where he was an early employee at Facebook and helped launch the Facebook login button across the internet. Maybe you've heard of the Facebook login. he 8x'd Reddit's revenues as the head of their ad product. And he also founded a company. He was CEO of MMTG Labs, a Sequoia-backed startup that was acquired by InMobi in 2012. And then he spent 3 years at Amazon as a startup business development guy, which was a team of ex-founders and VCs who flew all over the US, mentoring and advising startups. So that's a little bit about his background before he became a VC. So we're really, really excited to have Ryan here with us, and let's get going with the chat. Thanks for coming, Ryan. The crowd goes wild. The crowd goes wild. All right, you may have to turn on that microphone there. All right. Is this thing on? All right.
Do some beatboxing.
You could.
I could. You guys want beatboxing, or do
What
you
do
want
you-
VC advice? Beatboxing? No.
You're live. Can you break it out right now?
Is that good?
That's good. I like
don't
it.
in a mic. I just do it for
It
my
sounds
kids.
better in a mic, actually.
Yeah. I just do it for my kids usually. So.
And they're like, Dad, what are you doing?
No, they're like, that's awesome. My little 2-year-old's like, it's pretty awesome.
We'll do more of that later.
At the bar, right?
Yeah, at the bar. We'll have more drinks and then we'll
Karaoke.
do that. Cool. Well, so let's get started just with a little bit of background about like sort of where you come from. I know you have this kind of non-traditional story that we're going to get into, and it's very interesting. But like, where do you come from? Like at a base level, how do people get to know you from where you came from?
Yeah, I mean, wait, what was the question? How do they get
Just
to know
meaning
me?
like, yeah, I mean, how can they know who you are today based on like kind of like where you come from?
yeah,
You
I
are
mean-
from Texas originally.
Yeah, I'm from Texas, so I grew up in New Braunfels, just south on 35. I was a unicorn. That was our high school mascot. It was really weird. Got a hand sign
I was
too.
gonna say you got to show them the hand symbol.
That's right.
Okay.
That's what we did. Cliff Kingsbury was actually our quarterback. That was kind of cool. If you know Cliff, he was the Cardinals coach now, Arizona Cardinals. Anyway, so yeah, I grew up in New Braunfels. I was one of those kids that just got really into like hacking and reverse engineering in high school. It's the stuff you won't see on my LinkedIn. But you know, I definitely talk about it a lot. It just feels still weird at 37 to talk about how you broke the law when you were in high school. And so, yeah. So anyway,
Statute of limitations.
yeah. Hopefully we're okay. No, so I was just like, you know, really into like, if I download software, why does it ask me for a name and serial number or have a 30-day trial on it? And so, you know, most kids or people would go out and download a crack or something to, you know, get rid of that protection, or the software protection. But I was the kid who was, you know, disassembling the software and using a system level debugger to figure out, you know, what's actually going on in the executable in real time, and then, you know, actually patch it or write the key generator to make sure no one has to pay for it again. So
when
yeah.
you disassemble a software, what language are you going to be reading?
Assembly.
So you got assembly code out, and you're 14, 15 years old. When did you
Yep,
start doing
about 14,
this?
15, yeah. Is that the FBI?
That was awkward.
Should I
It
run?
could have been like, it's the sound of being raided by the
something
FBI.
like that. Sounds
No.
similar.
Anyway,
So assembly.
assembly
yeah.
language. So you're in your room.
Yeah.
There's like papers everywhere with printouts, and your parents come in, and what do they what do they
my
think?
dad's a pastor, so he started praying. Seriously, they were just like, "What is going on?" Like, you know, we come in, our kids, and you know, I had my own computer by then, and I somehow finagled that, and a lot of privilege. And so, yeah, I was able to, you know, have a computer pretty early on in life, and had my own, you know, modem, my own phone line. So I pretty much had, you know, access to the World Wide Web way too early in life. But I think it worked out a little bit. So, but yeah, I was deep into, you know, writing key generators. So basically, if no one knows what that is, if you download software today and you have to buy it, it'll ask you for your serial number for that software. And so back in the day, most of the software didn't connect to the internet to validate if it was registered or not, because everyone was on modems, right? And so there wasn't, you know, 24/7 internet access. And so they actually had to embed the algorithm for the serial number inside the executable file. And so I would spend weeks at a time with one piece of software disassembling that algorithm and going step by step in the assembly and figuring out what to doing in order to compare the real serial number with the fake serial number, because it did that in the memory. And if it was wrong, it would say, sorry, incorrect serial number. If it was right, it'd be like, congratulations, you're registered. And so for me, it was just like, it was just fascinating for like a 14-year-old to having a cat and mouse game with a team of engineers at Adobe or something their core responsibility was to write this algorithm, and then to have a 14-year-old kid sit there and break it, and then not only break it but create a separate piece of software that you could put in Donald Duck and it would give you a serial number that you can then register your software with. So if you're ever wondering who built those key generators, it was this guy. And it was just a lot of self-learning and just picking up books at the library. First book I actually got from the library, San Antonio College Library, was the Handbook of Applied Cryptography, because as I kept keygenning these things, they got harder and harder, and they kept putting in more crypto into them. So like RSA encryption. So with RSA, you have to basically factor the P and Q, and that takes a long time. But if the RSA bit level is low enough, it won't take as long. And so it's a brute forcing methodology. But I'm 14, and all of a sudden I'm seeing this kind of weird stuff in the assembly that's talking about RSA bits and keys, and I'm P's and Q's, and I'm like, what is going on in this algorithm? So then I start Googling and talking to my friends in IRC, like, what's going on? They're like, oh, you just found your first crypto algo. And so I had to go find a book on RSA cryptography to figure out what do I need to do to crack that. And so, yeah, I was just, people put problems in front of me, and I've just been reversing engineering them since I was, little. So, and I feel like the same thing with VC, just another problem for me to reverse engineer and to win, right? And so, I don't know, I'm a very competitive person. I played a lot of sports when I was a kid too, so I like to win, and this feels like one of those things where it's like, if I can reverse engineer it and be good at it, I'm definitely gonna win. And so, yeah, that's how I've been living my life, really. Just reverse engineering everything.
I'm having trouble doubting you right now. So you would think with all this sort of hacking and stuff you were doing as a teenager that you would have studied, you would have become like a computer scientist or something like that. Is that what happened?
No. So actually, in high school, I dropped out of school. I put the school's number on call block so they can stop calling my parents and tell them I'm skipping. Because really, all I wanted to do was...
That was innovative.
Well, I started getting thrown into ISS because I was late every day to school, and they're like, "Oh, this is a way that we can fix him, right? To throw him into in-school suspension, which is basically like a room in the back where you have to copy the student handbook all day as a punishment."
You've seen the movie Breakfast Club? Yeah.
I have, yeah, very similar. Yeah. And so I actually convinced them, instead of the handbook, if I could copy my programming books. And they're like, sure. So I was like, well, this is a great way for me to get what I really want to learn out of school, is to get myself in trouble to go to ISS so I can learn programming. And so eventually, I just was like, this is lame. I could do this at home. So why am I going to school? And so my junior year, I stopped playing football. My freshman year, it's Texas. Everyone plays football if you're a guy, feels like. But anyway, stopped playing football my freshman year and got really into computers around that time. And so my junior year is when I decided I didn't need school anymore. And so, yeah, my parents found out through a family friend that I stopped attending school. And then I eventually, I went to San Antonio College, St. Philip's. Anyone who went to those community colleges in life? Nothing wrong with that. I'm a community college graduate. And so, we did 2 years there, got my gen ed out of the way, and then transferred to Oklahoma Wesleyan University, which is a really small Christian liberal arts school in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, which my dad, I didn't have the grades to go anywhere, honestly. I hated school. I was working all through school. I worked in an architectural firm in San Antonio as their IT graphics design guy. It's on my LinkedIn. It's called Kel Munoz Architects. Anyway, so I got a job there as an intern through college and community college, and I just really wanted to work and make money. But eventually my dad, who was the pastor, was like, look, you got to go to a real university. He's like, I think I can, pull some strings and get you up into this really small school in Bartlesville, who was part of the Wesleyan church that my dad was the pastor of. And so he wrote a really nice letter, and I used all the privilege that came with being, who I was in life to go to school. And so I fully admit that. And, in reality, I probably shouldn't have never been in school with my grades I had, but they gave me a shot. They said, hey, we'll give you a probationary status to come up here and go to school. So that's how I went to school. And they, they had a trash CS department at the time. And so I ended up going and getting a design degree because it was, communications / web design, because I felt like I would be unstoppable if I could do design, wireframing, front-end code, and back-end code all at the same time. and I was right. So like literally at the time, that was a skill set nobody had, which is front end and back end, which we call full stack now. But at the time, that was just rare. You're either back end or you're front end. And so that enabled me to get a job pretty quickly out in Silicon Valley after I graduated from Oklahoma Wesleyan. And so, yeah, that's the quick story.
Awesome. You folks over by the window, if you want to talk, can you go outside, please? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, so cool. So you were at college, and when did Facebook come into this equation? Because I know you were working at a company. You had figured out how to build websites. Mm-hmm. This was very early internet.
Yep.
So
I was in college, and
how did the Facebook piece come out?
Yeah, I mean, I just, like I said, I like to make money, right?
Yeah.
So I when Facebook announced the platform, which was, what allows anyone to build apps on Facebook, I went home and I coded a TechCrunch app that night. And so, I'm a pretty opportunistic person as well. And so I quickly realized that if TechCrunch had an app, then there might be an opportunity to get some business from that, right? And so what I did was I built this app and allowed anyone to have their TechCrunch headlines directly on their profile on Facebook. And they used to have profile boxes on Facebook, if you remember way back in the day. And so you could build any app to live in that little box. And so I built the TechCrunch headlines to go in there. And then in the very bottom, it had a link to PDG Creative, which is still an agency in Bartlesville today. And that was the agency I was working at. And I think I got paid $12 an hour to do PHP websites back then. And so I wasn't the owner of this agency by any means. But they did the story. It was a Friday night. I remember Michael Arrington emailing me and saying, "Hey, this is great. Can you hit me on Skype and let's talk about it?" And this was like midnight, Friday Central. I'm like, yes. And so I started Skyping with Michael Arrington that night. And he was like, "I'm going to do a story about this. This is perfect. This is great." And then did the story. And then Monday I came in after my classes to the agency, and the guy who owned the agency, Matt Pendergraph, it was like, "What the heck did you do?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he hit play on the voicemail, and it was like, "Hey, this is Andrew Ross Sorkin of the New York Times Deal Book. We'd love to have an app just like the TechCrunch app." And it was like, "Hey, this is AOL. We want an app just like that. MSNBC here, want an app?" So it was like, uh-oh. He's like, "I don't know what you did over the weekend, but you need to get on the phone and call all these people back." And he's like, "Oh, can we sell this? What did you do?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, we can sell it." And so, we just switch out the logos, throw the RSS feed in, and sell it for $5,000 a pop. So that's what we started doing. We built one for New York Times, and we built one for AOL, MSNBC, UK, MSNBC. And that put us on the map. I mean, we were just building little candle websites for SMB, SMB websites like candle makers and stuff like that in Bartlesville, just really small SMB sites. And this put us on the map on a national level for, hey, we can actually build Facebook apps. And so for the next 8 months, I got my own little corner office, and I was on the phone. I went from PHP developer to creative director in a month. And he was just like, and he was like, "I don't know, you were building websites and now you're closing, $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 deals in the back room for us." And so that's when I realized, I was like, I got to get out of here and go to Silicon Valley. I think I'm, need to be somewhere else. And so I married my college sweetheart, and as soon as we got married, I started shipping my resume out to San Francisco, and I actually got flown over by the top UX firm in the world called Zurb, Z-U-R-B. And bless their hearts, they brought me in for a full interview. But then that night at the hotel, another startup came and interviewed me in the lobby because I was a unicorn. And they're like, "Hey, can you come interview?" I'm like, "No, these guys flew me out. I'm doing interviews with them." And this other startup was like, "Hey, why don't we just interview in the lobby of the hotel if you can't come to us?" And I'm like, "Okay." So they came to the lobby and they asked me what Zurb was offering. I told them, they're like, "Oh, we'll double it and we'll give you a reload package." And I was like, "I'm signing with you guys." And so that was a startup in Berkeley. And so went home, told my wife, we're moving to Berkeley, from Bartlesville to Berkeley. And moving truck showed up about 2 weeks later. And that's all she wrote. We ended up in Berkeley, and that startup ended up getting acquired about 3 months later by CNET. And CNET put us in the same building, CBS. CBS put us in the same building with CNET because they just bought CNET at the time. And so when I was at CNET, they were like, "Yo, you're the Facebook hacker guy," and I was like, "Yeah." So I started building these crazy skunkworks projects at CNET about mp3.com, download.com, the Insider, TV.com, all those kind of sites. So I was taking all these learnings I got from Facebook and hacking on the Facebook platform and applying that to their properties. And so one of those learnings was, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a button on CBS where you could actually log in with your Facebook account on Facebook, and people were like, "You are smoking the wacky tobacco. Like, what are you talking about?" Like, and I'm like, "No, listen, Orkut is doing this in Brazil, and they're actually using a licensed version of Facebook. So wouldn't it be cool if we did the same thing?" And so I looked at their JavaScript, reverse engineered it, and I was like, "We could do the same thing with the Facebook platform." And so I pitched it, and we did it. We launched it, and then TechCrunch did a story because, of course, I knew Michael Arrington, and I was like, "Hey, check this out." And he was like, "Cool story." Wrote it up, and then Facebook's BD team was like, "What are you doing? That's called Facebook Connect. We're launching that in 3 months at F8. You can't launch that." And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, "Take it down." So we had to take it down, and then we did a call with them, and they were like, "Do you want to be launch partners for Facebook Connect at F8?" So that's how CBS became the launch partner for Facebook Login, which just like, who would have thought CBS? But that's why, so because I hacked the platform. And so then when I was at F8, Facebook was like, "Hey, do you want a job at Facebook?" And so that's how I got to Facebook. That was 2008, and then
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah, I've just been reverse engineering everything my whole life, like everything from highly leveraged derivatives to option trading to cracking software to I don't know. I'm self-taught.
Right.
Yeah.
So where did that lead you in terms of entrepreneurship then? Did you actually wind up founding your own company?
So in Oklahoma at Bartlesville, before I ever moved out to California, I came up with this idea for one of our agency clients in the UK that, since we were doing this Facebook stuff, it was called Spinvox. I don't even remember Spinvox. They got pretty big in 2008, 2009 for having the first ever voice transcription service where you could call 1-800 number and be like, blah, 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 blah. It'd transcript that in the text, which at the time was just like mind-blowing. And they convinced all their investors that it was AI. But in reality, they had this huge team of people in the Philippines that were just like listening to all the messages and just like writing them down. That's a tangent, but it's hilarious. So look it up. It's funny. They finally figured it out a couple years after they launched, and the VCs were like, uh-oh. Anyway, so it was called Spinvox, and they were like, "Hey, can we have a service where you can call a 1-800 number and it would just update your Facebook profile, update your Facebook status message?" And I was like, "Yeah, we could do that." So they gave us the API, we built it, and I was like, this would be really cool if you would blast it out to all of your social networks at the same time, which Pounce, Jaiku, MySpace, Twitter, all of these guys were all competing to be the Twitter, right? And Twitter eventually won. But at the time, everybody was using all these different platforms because no one knew who the winner was going to be. So there was a real problem with like posting to one platform and not being able to get it to the other platforms. And most of these platforms didn't have APIs at the time. Like MySpace didn't have an API. And they were the leaders, and so they didn't want an API. They felt like it was, it was something you didn't do unless you were second or third place. But anyway, reality is that, so Spinvox, we launched that for them, and I was like, we should do this for all of them. So we created a company called Ping.fm. And that it was the first service that allowed you to blast all your social networks at the same time. And we used Spinvox as one of our partners to do a 1-800 number you can call, which is really cool. People were like, "Oh, you can do that." And then we also did, text message. You can text this 1-800 number and it would blast all your social networks. And so one of our first customers was Hootsuite. So Hootsuite, everyone knows Hootsuite now. When they were first getting going, they didn't have that technology to blast out to all the social networks, and so they licensed Ping.fm. And so before we ever got funding, I actually left the company because that's when Facebook was like, I was doing didn't really have any revenue coming in. We got TechCrunch and VentureBeat and Mashable and all that kind of stuff. So we got a lot of traffic going, a lot of word of mouth. And I actually reached out to our first investors by looking at our user table for 3-letter domains, because usv.com, US Venture, So and so that's how we got our first investor meetings, was basically going through our user table. But as that was happening, Facebook was whispering in my ear about, because I was at CBS while this was going down, about working for them, and I was like, ooh, how many times is Facebook going to ask you to join, right? And so I ended up taking an advisory role at Ping and then going to Facebook. So and then about a year later, Joy Ito of the Creative Commons and Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, actually put a check into Ping FM. And then they ended up selling the company about a year and a half later to Seismic, which is Loic Lemer's company, which then got bought by Salesforce. So, yeah.
It's quite a lineage.
Yeah. And so then, if your question, we go back to that 5 minutes later, how did startups come into play? So Ping FM was the first one, and then at Facebook, I had that itch. So Ping FM got acquired while I was still at Facebook, and so I was like, wait a minute, that was my idea. I executed the product on that, and then I went to Facebook. Like, I should be doing that, not working at Facebook. And so that's what motivated me to leave Facebook early. So I was there just long enough to lock in some stock and equity, and then ended up leaving Facebook in February 2009. And 3 months later, we launched at TechCrunch Disrupt in New York on stage and lost to Betterment and Hotels Tonight. Anyway, so that was my second startup. But because of that, Sequoia's Scout Fund came in and led our angel round. Alfred Lin of Sequoia, who's now the GP at Sequoia, was one of our main angel investors. And then, Dave McClure, 500 Startups, and it was kind of a who's who of Silicon Valley at that point. It's once Sequoia's in, it's kind of like whose money do you not want in? And so it was an amazing blessing. Like, it was awesome. Like, to go from GED kid to all of a sudden Sequoia's in my round, and I'm on stage in New York at TechCrunch Disrupt. So it was definitely one of those things where it was like, holy smokes, like, this is real. All right, like, I'm definitely doing real stuff in life. And I don't know, it was just kind of a humbling, just like, wow, like, it is just really, really cool. So anyway, so then Sequoia, and then we actually pivoted the company about a year after that, and turned it into appstores.com. So the original name was called App Bistro, and then we rebranded into App Stores and to be a white label app store platform. And turns out in China, app stores were like everywhere, and we started seeing Chinese users coming into our user table, and we're like, what is going on? And so we realized that there's no iOS in China at the time, so it was only Android. And so Android, you can have an app store, anybody can run an Android app store, essentially. With iOS, you have to go through the Apple App Store. And so for China, who didn't have iOS, they had tons of app stores, and that's when InMobi, our acquirer, reached out to us, and they're a huge mobile ad network in India, and they had just raised $200 million from SoftBank. And so they were out shopping around, and for U.S. companies to get their foothold in the U.S., and so they came to us with an all-cash offer, and just like, well, we should probably do this. And so we took the deal, and for the next 2 years, I was director of product for InMobi and split my time between Bangalore and San Francisco, 14 trips to Bangalore in 2 years. But it was an amazing experience. Like I've like brothers in Bangalore that like I will go to battle with, like just incredible people in India. Like, I love the Indian culture and food and people. It's just, it's amazing. So anyway, so then after that, I was kind of like, where do I want to work? I sold a company, worked at Facebook, and so I loved Reddit. And so I was really into the keto subreddit back in 2009 for all you new keto users. I think there was 9,000 users in that subreddit when I joined, and now it's over 400,000 people in there. But I was really big into weight loss and like all that kind of stuff, and still am. And so yeah, and so I was really into Reddit. I thought Reddit was like one of those sites where it just needed some love. It needed to clean up all the crappy content on there, and put in ads that weren't gonna like subjugate the community, or not, is that a word? But and, put in ads that are not gonna like alienate the community, and like video ads and stuff like that. So I really wanted to come in and listen to the users and put ads in at scale that people would love, right? That wouldn't feel like an ad. So that's what started our sponsored ad, or an ad that looks like a piece of content, essentially. And then I redid our self-serve ad flow at Reddit. And that generated a lot of revenue. And then yeah, if you know Reddit's history, Ellen Powell and Yishan Wong left the company at that point, and the original founders came back. And that's when I decided, my tenure at Reddit was done. I could tell they were going to bring in a whole new team. And honestly, like, I think my role at Reddit was to really save Reddit from itself at that point. There's a lot of inside stories that we could take offline, but there were some decisions made at the leadership level that I really questioned. And looking back in hindsight, it was definitely the right thing for me to drag my feet and protest some of these decisions. And I felt extremely vindicated when the original founders came back and asked me what I was working on. And I was like, well, I'm currently putting in Google DoubleClick across Reddit right now because I lost a battle to the leadership team. And they're like, stop. Do not put DoubleClick on Reddit. And so I felt extremely vindicated. And to this day, the founders of Reddit will say I saved Reddit from itself. And so, yeah, so I felt like it was a good time for me to leave, and that's when Amazon was, whispering in my ear about this role where I could fly around and mentor startups at Amazon. And so I did that for the last 3 years, and that's what brought me back to Austin. They asked me if I wanted to cover the Austin area, and if I wanted to relocate. And I was like, do I? My parents are in New Braunfels. My brother's in Kyle. He's got a he's got a daughter and a son the same age as my daughter and son. And
Right.
heck yeah, I want to move home. And so I moved home 2 years ago. I worked for Amazon here in Austin, managing our accelerator relationships with Techstars and Capital Factory. And then, the role opened up in the beginning of the year to join Firebrand.
Awesome.
And so I was like, yes, I'm in.
Quite the history.
Yeah.
So let's kind of pivot a little bit to the sort of the mentorship role that you do. You have all this experience. What I want to know is when you meet with founders, what is it that what do you help them with?
It's more like what I don't help them with, because
Okay.
I mean, like I'm a generalist. Like I said, like I was a designer, I was an engineer. I love like GTM go-to-market strategies, guerrilla marketing, like really thinking about like the user and how to get into their head, and like what are ways you could do really cheap, effective marketing for a startup at like a seed, pre-seed level. I was just talking to a gentleman here earlier about how my first company, Ping.fm. One of the ways we actually got traction pretty early was I realized there was a live stream of an intersection in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. If you ever know what the Tenderloin is in San Francisco, it's horrible. It's a bad place for, it's just a lot of drugs and crime and stuff, and it's really seedy. And so this guy put a live stream camera out of his window of an intersection and started live streaming. And so all these people were watching, and they had nicknames for all the the crack dealers and stuff. And anyway, Fox News picked it up, CNN picked it up, and all of a sudden they had like 60,000 viewers. So I took a bucket of sidewalk chalk out there and 4 friends, and we put Ping.fm in the huge crosswalk of the intersection with 60,000 viewers all watching this live stream. And everybody was like, yes,
That's hilarious.
that's amazing. And so, I went back home because we didn't have Google Analytics on our phone. You guys are lucky you have Google Analytics on your phone now, but I had to go run home and like hit refresh on our Google Analytics, and it was like this huge spike, and I was like, yes. And like people were like signing up. It was a B2C, right? So they were signing up and using the platform. So it was awesome. But anyway, so your question is like everything from recruiting. So my last company I just brought into Firebrand here in Austin, I recruited their CTO and co-founder. So we are seed stage, but we are pre-seed stage too for the right companies. And so, everything from recruiting to I'll do code reviews. I'll wireframe up some stuff. And honestly, like this is like I'm young, right? Like I want to be operating. I want to be rolling my sleeves up, and I want to be helping our founders. And so if I couldn't do that, I don't think I'd be happy being a VC, right? Because I need both of those realms to be happy. And I still scratch my entrepreneurial itch. I have some lifestyle businesses I run online that pay some of my bills and helps me like get out of the VC game a little bit and get back in the operator role. But for me, honestly, it's just about helping our portfolio companies like Albert and the guys Threat Care here in Austin, Marcus Carey. I've been really rolling my sleeves up and helping them lately. It's been, for me, it's just, I have to do that or I'll go crazy. Just writing checks all day, that's boring, right? So.
Sure. So it sounds really valuable for your founders. So what are some of the things that you see founders doing that you kind of have to redirect? You have to give them some tips to go in a different direction. What are common things that you're seeing?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. One of the things that it's kind of a red flag for me, and I try to have our founders avoid is outsourcing their development to agencies. Like, nothing wrong with agencies if you're an agency person here. Like, there's a place for you guys, and you're awesome. I worked at agencies. I totally get it. But at some point, you really need to bring that technology in-house. And so, bringing in a strong CTO candidate, leadership, that can actually, write code for you rather than, outsourcing out to somebody who might not have the same incentive and structure that CTO or VP or even a senior engineer might have on your team. And so, I understand there's a time and place to outsource, and I totally get it. And but it is one thing that I try to steer people away from as much as possible.
So related to that, you probably see founders who are non-technical but need to build a technical product. So how do you get them to understand how to build a technical product when they don't have any knowledge of that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it has to do with just education, sitting down with them a lot, right? So when I mentor, an example, Simone, I don't know if she's in here, but Simone at Athena, which is Techstars Impact company, currently going through the program. She's a solo founder, and she doesn't have a technical co-founder, and so I'm essentially playing that role for her right now as the mentor, right? And I'm reading the resumes she's getting in from the engineering prospects. I haven't interviewed anyone for her, but I'm definitely getting feedback on the resumes and that kind of thing. But also, she needs to outsource her development because she doesn't have anyone to do it right now, and she needs to get live before demo day. And so there is a time and a place, right, to bring in these outsourcing agencies and team freelancers, and so. But you need to have somebody there to help them through that process. And so bring in really strong mentors to walk them through that process. But more importantly, educate them on why they need to have someone in-house and why it could be detrimental to their company if they bring in a freelancer or an agency who might not have the best interests at heart or have that level of commitment that they do to the product and to the business. And so I use this example a lot, but when I launched at TechCrunch Disrupt in New York, my CTO, who I love to death, is a guy named Nolan, and he's at Google now as a senior product manager, and he was my CTO. Brand new to engineering CTO, he was a couple years into it, didn't have a database backup of our user table, and every user we got from TechCrunch Disrupt, we lost 24 hours later. So there are some serious issues with having people who don't have the expertise they need, right, to be a CTO or an engineer at an early stage company. And that's the same thing with agencies, right? If they don't have the expertise in-house, or, if they don't, if they're not thinking if they don't have the best interest at heart, or they're not, qualified, there is some detrimental things that can happen to your company, like losing your user table after, launching at TechCrunch Disrupt on stage. Luckily, we were able to pull out of that and, push forward, but we could have easily just folded up shop right there and just said, what, investors, here's all your money back. We're sorry, right? But we didn't. We kept pushing forward. Our investors said, keep the money, keep going, and we were able to get the exit. But it was just, so there are some real issues that can happen there. If you're not, So.
One of the themes from this tonight is your perseverance, your persistence through all of this. You seem to relish solving problems, but also just kind of don't quit, don't give up. So what is that something that you're just kind of born with, or what's the lesson there for founders? Yeah,
I think it's part of it is kind of innate, born with it. My son's 5, and my wife literally just sent me a video of him doing algebra. 5, and so I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. And he's extremely independent. And at Amazon, I was always the guy who was like, why do we have to go to the office and be with people? I'd rather be with founders and at my home, taking calls with founders. I don't understand why I'm in an office with a bunch of sales and BD people when I should be out meeting founders. And they're like, Market, you just walk to the beat of your own drum, man. And I'm like, I always have, right? And so I think that's just who I've always been. I never had any, crazy circumstances in my life that, forced me to have a control complex or anything like that. I think I'm just naturally want to be in control, in charge of everything, right? And so, yeah, I think it's just part of who I am, and I've always been that way. My parents used to say at the zoo when I was a kid, I would just walk away. Just gone. They would be like, where did he go? He's 4. You're like, where did he go? And they'd have to get on the loudspeaker. We're looking for a kid in blue shorts and red t-shirt. But it was everywhere, the beach, the state fair, the zoo. I was always like, peace, I'm out, and just start walking. And so it's just the way I've always been. I've never thought about anything different. That's just how I've always been. So that makes sense. But
how do we figure out what's the right thing to work on for ourselves?
That is an amazing question. You didn't prep me with that one. You know what? That I don't know if I've ever told you this, and I don't know why you asked that, but I was just thinking about this.
I'm psychic.
I think our bodies and our minds have a subconscious way of nagging us to tell us what we should be working on and what we should be doing, right? And so
I know it's so annoying.
Right? It's
it
true.
Is.
It's true. It's either, anxiety, you feel this oh, I should be doing something. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. But it's your body telling you hey man or woman, you should be working on something right now. And it's there, right? And you have to get it out of that subconscious and really figure out what it is. Usually for me, it's my inbox. But it's true. I have a heart condition called atrial fibrillation, and for many years, my body was warning me, hey man, you got an issue here, and you need to do something about it. And they was warning me by doing these kind of weird double beats in my heart. Boom. You know, I'm like sitting here talking to you, and boom, like, okay, that's not normal, right? And but I just let it go. You know, I was go out and drink with my friends. You know, it's California, smoke a little, you know, like, you know. But it was like it was constant, right? And I was like, okay, my body is definitely warning me about something here, right? And so, yeah, you know, over time it got worse and worse and worse until finally I was in full-blown atrial fibrillation, which is basically like a tornado pattern in your heart, which is pretty serious. And so you don't usually get it until you're older, but my body was definitely giving me warning signs about this coming. And so, and I think that's true for a lot of different things. You know, everything from, you know, you got something pressing on the back plate that you forgot about, but your subconscious didn't forget about that, and it's going to keep reminding you of that over and over again. But as far as like what you should be building, I think a lot of founders know already, right? Trust your gut. You know, I mean, there's data, and you should also always follow data. But at the end of the day, like when you're a pre-seed, seed startup, you don't have the luxury of data most of the time. You need to follow your gut and stick to it. And if it's gotten you where you're at today, it's probably a good signal. And so, you know, I'm not saying you should always follow your gut. You should just definitely, you know, check the data and make sure your course aligned. But, you know, yeah, the gut is a really powerful, like the subconscious is really powerful. And, you know, all these different external stimuli and data sources throughout your whole life have driven you to this point right now. And though you may not be like actively thinking about all those different data points and stimuli that came out through your life at this very moment, your subconscious might be. And that will arise in different ways, like through, you know, just, you know, for me, like I get a lot of anxiety. Like I'm an anxious person. You know, like you probably tell, I'm like 100 miles an hour. And so for me to calm down, I do a lot of hiking and running. It's Texas heat. But, you know, that's one way for me to calm down. I don't have to, you know, take prescription drugs or any of that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, for me, I know if they manifest in that kind of thing. And like, and also, you know, I have a lot of dreams, and you know, write down your dreams when you wake up. You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in your subconscious that, you know, it's warning. You know, it's warning signs or red flags, green flags, whatever you want to call it, about, you know, what your body and what you really should be working on. I know that's kind of fluffy and that kind of thing, but
Well, here's my. I hear you. I feel you. How do you figure out if you're delusional?
that's a great one. Mentors and friends. You should never, ever go through this life without having a strong friend that you can bounce ideas off of and bounce your visions and like what your future aspirations off of, and like let them bring you back down to reality a little bit. And you should always have good friends around you that can check you, right? And I do. I have really strong friends. One of my best friends in the world is a guy named Nick Lanning in Dallas, and he's a photographer. But we were born 2 days apart in the same hospital, in the same, two doors down from each other. And our parents are best friends, and to this day,
Brother from another mother.
exactly. And I call his mom Aunt. He calls my mom Aunt. And you know, to this day, I can call him anytime and just be like, Nick, I got this deal I'm looking at in Chicago. You know, they're doing this and that and this, and I want to write, you know, this huge check. And like, you know, he's not in tech at all, but you know, he has that. He can just ground me and be like, okay, calm down. Let's think about this. You know, like, and so, and also, you know, there's nothing wrong with therapy. Absolutely nothing wrong with talking to people. So if you know, honestly, I think everybody should have a therapist. And so, you know, have people that you can trust and rely on, that you can go and talk to and like really hash out some of these thoughts and dreams and, you know, different stimuli that are happening and enforcing you, making you feel like a certain way, and go talk to someone, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So
I like the friend's advice. What about, how do you get people who really know a subject area to help you when maybe you don't have a network yet? Nobody knows you, but yet you have these ideas, but you need help. Like, how do you get the attention of people who actually do know what you need to know?
You have to put yourself in their shoes, right? You have to think, okay, if this woman's a mentor and she's been through it 1,000,000 times, right? And what would get her interested in you, right? Okay, she gets these emails probably 4 or 5 times a day, right? How are you going to stand out in front of everyone else, right? Are you going to say, "Dear Sandy," right? Well, that's boring, right? Like, what if you said, you know, like very similar to what John did to Albert? This is not a joke, right? You need to stand out from people. And like for me, it was always like, okay, like what can I do to make sure that I'm not just, another email in the inbox, right? And so for me, it was always like, get creative. I would drop a GIF in the email, or like reach out to them on Twitter or LinkedIn, but in a very creative, like unique way that they would just be like, that's good, right? Like, it forces them to think about it a little bit more differently than everyone else in their inbox. And so, a lot of my success has been cold emails, So I actually did a Medium article about, this is the cold email that got me a job in Silicon Valley, and I published it. And my email ended, it was basically like, here's all the skills I can bring to your startup. And it was like, where do I sit, right? And it was like, just very assertive. It was like, no, I'm working there. You just need to tell me which desk I'm at, right? And it was like, super, like people like love that kind of stuff. It's different. It's not just like, here's what I bring to the table. Please email me back, right? It was like, no. Like, I'm working there, and this is what I'm going to do for you. And what they did is actually emailed me a PDF or PSD. And they were like, here, translate this in HTML and CSS. And that was at 7 p.m. Central, I got it. It was about an hour after I sent the email. And I was still at my work office. So I opened up my personal laptop, coded the HTML and CSS for that PSD right there. Within an hour and a half, they had fully XML5, CSS3, I don't know if CSS3 or CSS1 at the time, and responsive, IE6 compatible, IE7 compatible, Firefox, Chrome, and it wasn't Chrome yet, but it was those two. And they were like, what? Like that's insane. Like, we just sent this to you. How did you get? And I was like, I just did it. And so you have to stand out. You have to do that extra effort and really stand out and to make yourself, valuable to people. So
Yeah, knowing your value and then also bringing value to others, I think is a way to get their attention.
Yep.
Because it's not about what they can do for you; it's about what you can offer. Well, cool. I feel like we could go on quite a while here chatting, but we're close to 8:00, and I want to let the audience talk to you. So I want to thank you very much for having the chat.
Well, thanks
and
for bringing
let's
me
give
in,
Ryan a
man.
big
Appreciate it.
round of applause. And I'm going to pass this to the audience. If anybody out there has any questions, let's turn it over to you guys. Anybody? All right. Yeah. No, let's use a mic because there's a live stream, and then let's pass the mic around to each other.
I love the mentality of just grinding and working hard. I definitely subscribe to that. Just give it everything you got. How do you switch off? Do you switch off? I mean, or how do you, I don't at all. And I find that maybe after a week I can feel a bit tired and stuff. But I guess, do you have any advice on that, or just keep going and just see what happens?
No, luckily I have an amazing family. So I actually do have a pretty set schedule. At 5 o'clock, I'm done. I switch off. So, it's a luxury. I fully admit it. But at 5 o'clock, I start cooking dinner. I'm the chef of the house. I love to cook. So it's a luxury. I can leave my home office and go through my multiple doors to keep the kids out, and then go in and be able to spend some time with the kids and cook dinner and put them to bed. So that's my good 2.5 hours. I switch off and really spend time with the family, and also in the morning I get the kids ready for school and that kind of thing. But for the most part, I'm on the grind. I do have to carve out time for my family because it's. As a VC, your inbox is just constantly full, right? And so, I need to make sure I'm always getting back to my founders and not leaving them hanging or anything like that. And so, and especially my LPs and my investors who invest in our fund. So yeah, there isn't really a switch off. I do play PC games every now and then. I play PUBG. I don't know if anyone plays PUBG, but it's one way. I'm always my kid at heart, right? I've been playing PC games since I was a kid, and so that's one way I can, for an hour, just kind of take everything that's going on in the world and just zone it out and just focus on this one little mission for 20 minutes or whatever it is, right? And that's one way I stress. But I also do a lot of hiking. So there's a hiking trail by my house in Circle C where I live, and it's called Slaughter Creek Trail, and it's a 5.5 mile circuit. And was it last May? No, May. Yeah, last May. Last May, I started hiking on that trail, and I started walking, and now I can run half of it. And so, for me, that's like one way that I've found I can just zone out and just turn everything off for a little bit and get out of just craziness of the internet, right? But yeah, I mean, I set restrictions on my phone too, right? So I have app restrictions. After 10 p.m., I don't use Facebook or Twitter or any of that kind of stuff. But as a VC, you kind of have to use those things, right, these days. So, yeah, that's some ways I do it.
Nice, thanks.
Yep.
I have a really dumb, unrelated startup question. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, I love dumb questions.
Okay. Why does the Narwhal bacon at midnight?
I didn't hear you.
Why did the no? You worked at Reddit for a while, and I wanted to get the developer's opinion. Why did the Narwhal beckon at midnight?
That's the question. That's the Reddit question you ask other users. I don't remember the answer to that question, but basically it's kind of like if you know World War II history, they used to have these little clickers. When they flew into to France during the Normandy invasion, this is kind of a tangent, but they gave all the Allied soldiers these little clickers because at night you wouldn't know who was coming around the hedge if it was a German soldier or an American soldier, and so you would go. And if it was an American soldier, they knew to pull out their clicker and go. And so you knew who was behind that hedge was an American, and so you wouldn't shoot them. So what you're asking is very similar in that if you're a Reddit user, this is a question you ask other people in public to see who else is a Reddit user, right? And so it started years ago, like 10 years ago, and it was kind of this theme that was like, okay, if you're at a bar and you're meeting people for the first time and you ask this question to see if anyone else is a Reddit user, right? So I don't know the answer to the question, but that's where it all came from.
Oh, the answer is midnight. That's when
midnight. Yes, it's midnight.
But why midnight?
I don't know. It's kind of
know.
like why clickers versus anything else.
The clicker turned out the longest day. That the clicker thing did not work out. It ended up sounding like a rifle cocking, and then.
You're right. Yeah, because
Yeah,
they're right
yeah.
because the Germans
Yeah.
figured it out, and they figured out that they could cock their MP5s and make it sound just like the clicker. So you're right.
Oh, thank
We
you.
should get coffee, man.
I get a lot of stuff to talk about. I'll talk to you later. All right. Any
That's
questions?
awesome.
As you've worked in two big companies, Facebook and Amazon, how do you feel about the censorship that Facebook and other big tech companies are engaging in right now?
I don't really have an answer to that. I haven't been following the Facebook drama because I don't work there, and I just use Facebook for blasting out my VC stuff like that. So I don't really have an answer to that. I'm sure there's some kind of censorship happening. Who knows? I have no idea. And when I was there, I was never privy to any of those kind of algorithms or any of that kind of stuff. I was on the platform team. So.
My question is, as the country goes into more of a corporate versus the gig, corporations versus the gig and independent self-worker economy in regards of the startups, in regards of people going out on their own, how did you balance out pushing the grain against a big corporation like Reddit while you were inside it, and then having that balance of still working in between the corporate lines?
That's a great question. I was never good at that. I was always the person pushing against the grain, right? Because I'm not one to hold my feedback in. So for better or worse, it could not turn out great for you, right? Especially if you're the only one in the organization dragging your feet on something. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance. If you want to stay in that corporation for a long time, you have to really be conscious and strategic about how you bring things up, when you bring it up, and for me, I didn't learn that lesson until way later in life. At Facebook, I was always the guy who was like, why aren't we putting ads on publisher sites? This is silly. I was like, we have like buttons all over the internet. Couldn't we just add a feature in the JavaScript to start rendering ads next to the like button? I was like, this is silly. And they were like, that's a great point, but we're not going to do that. And I'm like, well, why not? And so I rose this big stink about it. And I'm like, we're missing out on this $1 billion opportunity by not competing with Google AdSense, right? We not have our own Facebook AdSense. And they did do that eventually, but it was for mobile. They realized that was actually more profitable and a better business model on mobile, running mobile ads on third-party apps. So if you're in a game right now, I think it's a 30% chance you're going to hit a Facebook ad. You just won't know it. It'll just be a big banner in the game, but it's powered by Facebook Audience Network, which is essentially the idea I was screaming at them to do when I was there. But they did do it, and they did it way better, and they did it for mobile. But in reality, I probably should have just kept my mouth shut and focused on my day job, which was helping platform developers succeed. So your question, I mean, for people like me who are like constantly seeing the future and like, why aren't we doing this? And I'm very vocal about things. It can be detrimental to your career at certain jobs, right? So at Facebook, they were like, why, you're not a product manager. Like, why are you doing this stuff? And, you know, in reality, like, they're right. I should have just been focusing on my data job, right? But it's interesting. At Amazon, they source all these business ideas. So the opposite of Facebook, essentially. At Amazon, when I was there, they would take us into a room and be like, all right, we want all of you guys to think big for 2 hours. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, we want you to think, what should Amazon be doing right now? Like, anything? And they're like, yeah, anything. So we would sit there and just brainstorm for 2 hours, like everything Amazon should be building. Oh, we should do grocery. We should do all this. And then we would throw them on the board, and then the group of 10 people would vote on the ideas. And then we would assign what we call a PR FAQ to somebody in the room to that idea. And a PR FAQ is basically a working back document on Amazon where you essentially say, this is the press release 5 years from now for that idea on the whiteboard. And your job is to come up with the press release, the headline, the quotes, the customer quotes, and the FAQs at the bottom of the press release for what people might ask about that product coming out in 5 years from now. And so they had a structure and a process for getting those ideas out of us, whereas Facebook were like, why are you telling us what we, you know what I mean? Like, and so at Amazon, they actually reveled in that fact that like, hey, there's a lot of great ideas in our workforce. Let's bubble them up and then get them to write the PR FAQs for our product team, and then they'll decide if they want to build it or not. And so yeah, that's pretty cool. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but it was fun to answer.
Hey, Ryan, I got a quick one for you. First,
yeah.
thank you for the excellent founder story.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm going to move this mic up here afterwards so everybody gets a chance. I want to ask you, you spoke to gut, right? Follow your gut. So have you ever had a scenario where your gut told you one thing, but the paying customer was constantly pointing you in a different direction?
Yep.
And if you had that, would you explain, and how might a founder determine what is the appropriate thing, and are the various stages that make sense to act accordingly?
Yeah, good question. I can't think of anything specific right now, but I'll give you a quick story. I saw this ridiculous GIF the other day of this woman who went into a McDonald's and ordered a ice cream cone. And instead of just going and eating it, she just put her hand on the ice cream and then ate the bottom part. And then the person at the cashier had a label. It was developer, and it was like, and then the manager of the McDonald's came around the corner and was like, like that, and then the label was founder. And then the label for the woman who was eating the ice cream cone was customer. So the developer was like, hey, you should eat it with the ice cream first. And the founder was like, what are you doing? And the customer's eating the backwards way with a hand on the ice cream and eating it the other way. Exactly your point. I mean, like, there's so many times you're like, well, we designed it to work the other way, and you just kind of just been using it the other way. And I'm trying to think of an example of that where that's happened. It's happened so many times. I just can't think of a specific example. But I will say, listen to your customers. Like, at the end of the day, your gut is great. It's important. It's super important, and you should listen to it. Doesn't mean you should do everything your gut tells you to. I think gut is really important in the earliest stages before you have customers. But once you start having customers and doing customer development meetings, I think that almost trumps your gut at some point, right? And so at the end of the day, you're building for your customers. You're not building for your gut, right? And so you need to be talking to your customers. And so gut is really important in the early days of thinking, okay, what's the vision I want to build, and like, what's the vision ultimately that I want to build towards? But data should be driving your day-to-day, right? And so yeah, I mean, I think if your customers are using your platform in a completely different way than what you envisioned or what your gut was telling you was going to be the vision, I think you should still talk to them and figure out, okay, why are they using it this way? Are more of you going to be using it this way? And should we either, focus the product that way, or should we maybe spin out another version of the product in another company, essentially, or a shell of the parent company, and maybe tweak it for those customer segment? I don't know. It's all contextual, but I think you really need to focus on your customers as much as possible. Once you have real customers paying and they're using it in a different way than you expected, that's actually a sign that you might be onto something, which just might be not the thing that your gut was telling you about. So,
hey, my name is Faisal, and I have two questions. The first one is, what suggestions or hacks do you have as far as acquiring beta testers for a B2B? And second question is, who do you look up to and why?
Wow, these are deep. Okay, so for the first one, how to acquire beta customers for a B2B mobile or website? B2B website or service. Okay, marketing software. I'm a big fan of tapping into meetup.com. There's a lot of good stuff in there as far as like, groups that you can go and attend their meetups and start talking to people. So I had a portfolio company called Respondly in San Francisco. It got acquired by Buffer eventually. And anyway, they were like, how do we get customers? And we had this amazing tool that allows you to pull in all your social feeds into a one unified inbox and respond to all your customer inquiries through social through this one inbox. I think it's called Respond Buffer now or something. But anyway, I was like, guys, you're targeting customer service people or marketing people who need to be like reaching out to their community online. Have you tried just going to Meetup and like seeing if there's any meetups for people who are customer service or marketing folks who like every month go to these meetups? You could just go in, buy them pizza, sponsor that meetup, and sit down at a table and talk to 50 of your customers in one night. They were like, oh, what did we do? So I actually went with them to the customer meetup as their investor, and we all three sat down there and we talked to customers for 2 hours that night, and it was just eye-opening, It was like, oh man, that was amazing. But yeah, meetup.com is just, it's a great place to just find your customers and where they're meeting and where they're going to be in person, and go hustle. Get down there with some business cards and some wireframes and maybe a little mini whiteboard or whatever it is to go down there and just validate and solution or validate the problem or the solution validation, whatever you're trying to validate. Go down there and talk to them. Just get in front of their face and be like, hey, this is what we're building. It's amazing. And we want your help, your feedback, and and you might get some customers out of it too. Oh, thanks. Who do I look up to? That's a good one. Yeah, probably my dad. Yeah. Do I have to go by? So my dad's a pastor, and he's a hospice chaplain. So.
I have it. So constant theme is reverse engineering and hacking. So I'm curious to hear about what you've done with VC so far to attempt that reverse engineering, and like what things that you want to attempt hacks at. Because I guess from the outside, it doesn't necessarily seem like there's a ton of room to reinvent the wheel. And so I want to know how you're going to do it.
That is a great question. Let's see. For VC, what have I done to reverse engineer the field yet? For me, it's been just a lot of talking to people who are VCs. So one of my mentors is Alfred Lin at Sequoia. And so, I went in guns blazing into VC. I wanted to start writing checks on day one, right? I wanted to go in, start sourcing deals, and because that's basically what I was doing at Amazon's, meeting startups and investing my personal capital, but also Amazon's social or AWS capital, whatever you want to call it, credits or whatever. And so, yeah, for me, it was just like talking to people who've been there, done that, been in VC for years and years and years. And they said, you shouldn't make an investment in your first year. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, and he said, you need to be learning as much as you can. And this is your next career move, and you're going to be in it for 10 years. Like the first year should just be drinking from the fire hose of VC. And for me, it's been reading books, a lot of books. I read E-Boys, the Bessemer story, the Benchmark story. I've been releasing a lot of podcasts, 20-minute VC. But I don't know, like for me, I'm such an unusual VC, right? Like I didn't come from HBS, Harvard Business School, or Wharton, or any of that kind of stuff. And so, a lot of the ways I source deals is different than what most VCs source deals. Like they have their networks and things like that. I like to use algorithms and write scrapers and like give me like ways that give me unique advantages over other VCs. Whereas they might wait for someone in their network to introduce them to somebody, and then they'll take the meeting if they're interested. Like John and I, we will reach out to founders and just be like, hey, through our diligence of sourcing deals, we think you're an amazing founder. We're not going to wait for someone to tell us that. Like we have the gut, we have instinct, and like I've seen companies, I've been in companies succeed, like go from 10 employees, or not 10, but a couple hundred at Facebook to, I think it's like 40,000 now or something. I've seen early days, and I've seen successful companies and successful founders. And so if we can hit those check boxes, I don't need to wait for an intro. Like let's do it. Let's jump on the phone. Let's have coffee. Let's meet up. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's like, what are the tools I can use that make me unique in the sense of like, yeah, I write scripts. I have Chrome extensions that help me do my job like every day. Like I have, I constantly like, what are ways that I can optimize my time and efficiency and, hack my life. Essentially, at Amazon, they have an entire wiki called the Market Hacks, and it was basically like I hacked my job. Like they were like, "How do you do your job so well?" And I'm like, "I wrote scripts." They're like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a Chrome extension. You put it in your Chrome extension, and now when you're in Salesforce, which we had to be in all day at Amazon because there was a BD team, instead of going from like users to I'm going to add my meeting into this account for this startup I met. I had a script. I was just like, click, and it was like, done. I'm like, all right, I just met with all 50 companies right there, and like, done. Whereas like the other guys on the team were sitting there going, and so I shared that back with the team. And I was like, here's how I hacked my job. Like I no longer have to spend 2 hours in Salesforce to do 10 things. Now I can do in 5 minutes. I can do 50 things, and they were just like, awesome. And so, I mean, that's just like one example. But that's what I'm bringing to VC as well, right? Like all these optimization, deal sourcing hacks, scripts, Chrome extensions. Like, I don't know. I guess I don't know if I answered your question, but that's essentially what I'm doing is just like, how can I be a VC? How can we be a tier 1 VC in the Midwest with 2 people, right? With limited funding, limited budget. How can you source a Sequoia type deal in Austin with 2 people and 1 associate, right? And I'm not Live Oak or any of these big VCs here in Austin. We're a tiny fund, but we're getting into those same deals as Live Oak and some of these other guys because of these hacks and optimization things I built where I don't have to spend, wasting my time, doing just ridiculous like things, right? Like I can just have a script do it for me, and that gives me more time to make sure I'm getting the right deal flow and the right people, right? And so I don't know. Like I don't know if that's a good answer. I'm still learning everything. I'm only a couple months in, so ask me again in a year. I'll probably have some better answers about how I'm reverse engineering the field. But I think I'm starting to like figure it out. So hey.
Every red flag you named for a startup founder categorizes me. So I outsourced very early, but the agency I hired did everything exactly to my liking, and they even offered ideas that I didn't think of, ultimately making my product better. Mm-hmm. I'm ready to hit the App Store in about 7 days. So should I remain with the same agency that built my entire product, keep them on a contract so they can update, or should I make it a priority to find a CTO?
That's a good question. I think you should test the app at scale, right? So you should throw a couple thousand fake users at it at a time, and just make sure it's going to stand up to traffic, right? Like that's one of the big risks of an agency is like they do a lot of the work up front of making it really look nice. But when it's time to scale the back end, that's a lot of times where the agencies fall down, right? Because a lot of agencies don't have that in-house DevOps skill where they're going to say like, hey, we'll throw you in the AWS cloud. That's it. They walk away, right? But that's not, unless they know what they're doing with AWS cloud and actually setting up like, ELB, elastic load balancers, or putting in auto scale groups or stuff like that. And if they're not doing those things for you, then you're actually set up to fail as you scale, right? And so you really need to be thinking about on the back end, you really need to be thinking about like what can you do to abstract away the back end so it auto scales on its own. So on the front end side, you can just focus on the features and the product set, and that's a great segue to 8base. So if you're not thinking about 8base as a backend, it's kind of like Parse for React. If you know what Parse is, this guy knows what Parse is, then it's very similar to that, where it's kind of a fully I don't think of the word, but it's basically wrapping your back end and your front end all together, so you don't have to worry about it. Essentially, that's a really elementary way to say it. Thank you. Yep. So yeah, I mean, I would think about it that way. Like, how can you abstract away the back end and early? And as long as it's auto scaling and growing with you as you scale, it should get you, to a funding round where you can then hire some engineers to come in and, rewrite it a little bit. I'm actually talking to a company here in Austin that's going through something very similar, that brought in an agency in, got them to a V1, got them to their first angel checks, which then allowed them to go recruit some engineers from Rapid7 to come in and be their first engineers. So I'm not saying it's a red flag. I mean, it's a little bit of a red flag, but you need to have a plan, right? A plan to get off the agencies and into, some in-house developers or some developers who are committed to you, right? Might work for an agency, but they're fully committed to your project, and they have the skill sets to scale the back end as well as the front end. So, yeah, just have a good plan to get off of it. Yeah.
Hi. So what's one lesson that you've learned from your kids and one lesson that you try to teach them?
Wow, you guys are good tonight. Okay, one thing I've learned from my kids. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good one. I would say life is short. I don't know. It's kind of cliche, but, when you see your kids go from, being born to 5 and it feels like that, it's like, I don't know. It's just, it makes you feel like, you need to be focusing on your priorities a little bit better. Like, less PC gaming time and more, hanging out with my family, right? And so, like, I've definitely restructured my entire life to this point. Like, I don't go out at night. This is the first time I've been out after 5 o'clock in probably 2 years, seriously. You won't find me at bars on 6th Street. You won't find, it's not who I am anymore. I used to be like that, but, since I've had kids, it's just made me realize what's important in life, and really, being out and, doing those kind of things is just not a priority for me anymore. And so, yeah, I think it's just, my kids have taught me that life's short and you got to focus on what really matters. So, and then I think something I've taught my kids. I tried to teach them, but it hasn't gone through yet. Probably assembly. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think Minecraft. No, I don't know. No, I think, my son Charlie is on the spectrum, and so. So I think, it's been challenging to, the last 5 years, or I guess 2 years, because when he's been diagnosed. So, yeah, I mean, empathy has been a tough one for him. And so really kind of trying to elevate his EQ really early in life so that, he doesn't have some of the same problems I did. And so, yeah, I think, teaching him really early about EQ is really important, and it still hasn't grasped yet. And so I think he'll get it. But, he's really into numbers and deep sea creatures and dinosaurs. And, when I'm trying to teach him about, well, let's think about how other people feel, right? And we're still working on that. So, I don't know. It's kind of a silly answer, but yeah. Yeah, there's a book. I thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, I'm actually working on a book. Yeah, it's about failure. So, cliche, but yeah, my first interview at Facebook, I failed. They didn't hire me. So, tried again. Didn't finish high school. Figured it out. Went to university. Right, like, I've failed at a lot of things. I first big windfall I got from my acquisition, I put a lot of money in the stock market, right? Like, it took a lot of learnings in reverse engineering to figure out, okay, this is how the stock market works. This is how options work. This is how, and so I got better at it, but I lost a lot of money getting better at it. So there's a lot of failure stuff there. I was also, in high school when I was kind of going through my hacking phase, I got involved with some bad kids and got into some drugs and stuff like that, and was able to get myself out of that and clean up my life and go back to church, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of failure in my life. I have a lot of wins, but I have a lot of losses too. And so I want to write about that. And I want to be real about like how I got here. It wasn't, wasn't all pretty, you know. And so I'm in my 4th chapter of the draft right now. I need to use your platform. I think I should use your platform. Guy's the CEO of Writer Duet. It's an amazing writing, script writing, and novel writing. It's everything platform now, right? But it started with script writing. Now he's got everything on there, book writing and everything else. So anyway, I'm working on that, and so yeah, hopefully we'll have it out sometime next year or sometime. But that's the goal. But yeah, I'm excited about it. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah.
When it comes to gaming, everybody sees it as a huge emerging market, especially with some of the gaming AI scripters are going into big time AI scripting now. And where do you see interactive entertainment truly revolutionizing the common people's lives?
I don't know. I'm a huge TikTok user. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer to that. I don't know where it's going, honestly. I know AI is going to be a huge component of it. I know, with deep fakes and all this other kind of crazy stuff that's going to be coming out soon, that you could essentially create a whole TV show of John Wayne characters. You know what I mean? Like, you could essentially create a whole new John Wayne episode of a Wild Wild West cowboy show that never existed, but the AI will generate it based on watching 100 John Wayne movies, right? So you can imagine in a world we're going to where, like, you can imagine a movie and then using Writer Duet, write out your screenplay and having AI go out and build the movie for you over a course of a couple of weeks of rendering, or something like that. So I don't know. Like, I'm always kind of a futurist in that kind of sense. So I don't know if it's headed in that direction. It'd be cool if it was in that direction, but I have no idea. Like, if I knew, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I'd probably be in a castle somewhere. I don't know. Like, if I had that kind of crazy futuristic way of telling the future, I have no idea, man. That's a good question. No idea.
And second question to follow up on that is the MLG and regarding to that becoming more big is already...
MLG? What's that?
Yeah, the Major League Gaming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're talking about esports. Is that where you're going? Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I'm a big believer in esports. I think that's the future. I mean, we're starting to see high school teams now, right? Like, when I played football in high school, now there's there's League of Legends teams and, Fortnite teams and things like this. And so I think that's the future. I think it's the early days right now, and we're probably going to see a little innovator's dilemma here pretty soon, if we're not already in that pattern. But I still think it's the future. I think, you can't ignore the numbers, right? Like the viewership on, the League of Legends and some of these tournaments that are going on in esports. They're pulling in more people watching these shows than the Super Bowl, right? So, once you have the eyeballs, the advertisers follow. It's just a matter of time. So, we all good? Oh.
What's your opinion on coding boot camps as like a way to get into marketable skills?
I love them. Love it. I love it. I'm a mentor at Lambda School here in Austin. So when the students graduate from Lambda School, I'm on the list of mentors they can call to try to get a job in the market. These people coming out of these programs have serious skills. Like they could legitimately come in and start working right away and contributing to your code base. And so as long as the code, these programs are teaching relevant and newer standards, and I have no problem with that. I love it. Like, we need more and more talent in the market, and any way we can get people faster and quicker up to skill, and it's where they can start contributing right away, more power to it. Like, we need more people like that. And we need people like who didn't go to college, who just want to pick up front-end engineering and start, change their life, change their family's life. And we need more ways for that to happen, because there's a ton of demand still for engineers and developers and product managers and designers and stuff like that. So, good? Done?
Okay, are we wrapped up here? Okay. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks
Give
for
Ryan
having me.
another a round of applause.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for spending an evening with us after 2 years of being at home.
Yeah, no,
We really
thanks.
appreciate it.
No
It's
problem.
awesome.
I'll be back 2 years from now.
Sounds good. I'll put it on my calendar.
Awesome.
It was great.
Thanks, guys.
So we're going to hang out a bit here, and then probably at 9, anyone who wants to head across to CU29, we'll have a drink or so over there and hang out. But appreciate y'all coming out. Thank you.